This podcast will fail. Mostly because nobody's going to listen to it. But you might prove me wrong. Who knows? And welcome to episode 12 of This Podcast Will Fail. The show where everything is made up and the points don't matter. I am your humble host, just some guy. Who I am has become more and more evident that it is irrelevant. My name is unimportant. Who I am, where I am, none of it really matters. This podcast series is an effort on my part to work through a lot of the mixed emotions and struggles and all of the baggage that I have accumulated in 15 plus years of being a content creator and watching so many of the things I create not work out. So I have been working through, in these past 11 days, each and every one of the projects that I have started, from writing a book to hosting internet radio and building websites and making digital content to starting a YouTube channel after a long absence, putting that YouTube channel aside and starting a second channel, having that channel only last about a year, moving into a resurgence around writing a book. Oh, not to forget the first time I tried to do a podcast in the professional space. And I have come to recognize and understand a couple of really important things for myself. One is, like most speakers, I say the word and far too much. It is interesting to edit this 20-minute podcast every night, looking for anything obvious that needs to be adjusted, whether that is the clearing of a throat, which I figured out how to stop doing that. Spoiler alert, I record this podcast most days in the front seat of my car, parked in a scenic town park in the middle of a metropolitan city. Which one is completely irrelevant. But what I figured out was that eating lunch before I speak clearly into the microphone results in a whole bunch of phlegm, a whole bunch of congestion coming out of my nose, a whole bunch of throat clearing, and my voice garbling up a bit as I work through that. So I figured out finally that I need to just go ahead and turn the dang on recorder on and start talking, and then after I finish talking is when I should eat my lunch. So there's that. That's that moment of realization. I figured out a lot of things in the past 11 days, and I've worked through some serious hang-ups that I've had, and sometimes I get a little lost in the sauce, like just there, trying to think around a corner. All right, so where do we go today? What do we do with today's episode? I guess I want to maybe take a moment here and think back at some of the obvious revelations and signposts that I have found along the way in this journey. And most specifically is how much self-sabotage there is involved with me as a creator. What I think a lot of this boils down to, and I'm really would be curious if I was able to have this conversation with other creators, which I haven't really had any conversations with any other creators in quite some time. I have sadly and admittedly pulled back from my various social connections and friends and contemporaries and acquaintances, and I haven't really talked to anybody about anything in a while, apart from talking to myself here on this podcast that nobody's listening to. But the self-sabotage is pretty prevalent. I moved through the years with all of these grand ideas, and I get frustrated and quit very quickly. More progressively quicker each time. when I look back at the amount of time that I spent, for a great example, on the internet radio side, I created and hosted a talk show for 4 years. In the span of that time, built a website around it and brought in a whole network of other broadcasters and built a radio station around that. So between the talk show and the radio station, that all lasted about 6 years, give or take, 6 or 7, somewhere between 2005 and 2012 or so, 2011, 2012. So 6 years that it took me to finally get fed up with playing to an empty room and not seeing the results that I hoped for me to finally just quit and hang it up and move it along and shut it down and move on. So 6 years the first time. My big adventure in YouTube land, really now, it's hard to say whether or not I've actually stopped it because I've put it on pause multiple times, but that has lasted somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 years. If I look at the amount of time spent actually actively creating content versus being on a quote-unquote break, I think it amounts to about 4 years. I started that in 16, and here we are in 20. So from 6 years to 4 before I finally got fed up and moved on. I started a second channel where I tried to revive my character from the talk radio show in YouTube form, in a game show form, and that lasted 1 year. So from 6 to 4 to 1 before I said, I'm out of ideas, I'm bored, I'm not seeing a response, I'm playing to an empty room again, I've had enough and I'm done, and I hang it up. On to a weight loss journey and a health and fitness journey, which involved recording YouTube videos for, I think I'd have to look specifically at it, and I don't want to do that right now, but I'd have to look and see. I think it was like 23 weeks, which 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 23, call it, so what, 4.5 to 5 months of doing those videos weekly and writing a book, which didn't actually take me all that long. I think the book probably only took me about a month to fully write and publish before I was done with keto, because I wasn't seeing book sales and I wasn't seeing a response, and I was standing in an empty room. So from 6 years to 4 years to 1 year to 5 months, and a podcast after that was in there in the middle somewhere that only lasted literally 10 weeks. It's like the engines are cycling down. The battery life on me as a creator is atrocious, and my ability to stay recharged after you unplug the charger is reducing every single time, and that is frustrating. However, I have identified where I've gone wrong and where I've gone right. And I have, I think, glimpsed a little bit of what's going on in the long run and the big picture here with all of this. And that is whether or not, here's the big revelation. Here's where we bring brass tacks to bear here. It is whether or not I am engaged in a creative project for the simple sake of creating, versus if I am involved in a creative project because I want it to turn into some type of a money-making business. And it is every single time that I push my projects to the point of expectations, I fail. When I was doing the radio show simply for the sake of getting up and acting like a clown and doing all of the radio DJ stuff, doing the talk-ups, hitting the post, conducting an interview, playing a segment, when I was doing that, I was on fire. I was alive. When it became, how do I translate this into a quote-unquote real radio station and try to go compete head-to-head with FM radio in my local area for advertising dollars and for market share, it fell apart. With the initial YouTube channel, when I was making videos for the creative joy of making videos and just trying to be a part of a community and a network of friends and contemporaries, albeit the specter of you watch me, I'll watch you, that I talked about a few episodes ago. Other than that, when I was just having fun and being creative and learning how to do editing techniques and learning how to do green screen and learning how to do split screen and learning how to color grade, which I never really learned very well anyways, but learning how to do all of that video production stuff, filming techniques and editing techniques and the whole thing. That was fun. When I started wondering why my videos weren't taking off, and when I started trying to craft viral videos, and when I was about to, I never even said this before, I was about to sink like $1,200 into a course to learn how to make money on YouTube, I failed and I walked away. When I saw that there wasn't anything happening with the resurgence of the talk show host character and the game show on YouTube, when it wasn't growing and it wasn't getting a market share, I quit. When the book didn't sell, I quit. When the podcast wasn't attracting listeners, I quit. I think that's my lesson. I think that's what it boils down to. And I may be, I don't know, I may be jumping the shark here a little bit, because there's some other stuff I want to talk about. And now that I look back on it, I'm not sure why I went down this road in the first place today. I don't really know. The other day when I recorded this episode, here I'm talking about, I'm all tongue-tied now. Holy crap. No wonder nobody's listening to this. This guy's a moron. When I recorded a couple days ago and said, I think I know where this season ends, right? I called this Season 1, 15 Years of Failure, and I wanted to walk through all of the different scenarios of my creative life to try and understand what went wrong and why. I thought, okay, here we are, we're 10 episodes in. I think that there's probably another 5 to 10, something like 20 episodes in this first season before I move on to something else. Well, here we are. Today is episode 12 out of a proposed potential 20, and I may have just well, that's a really bad metaphor in my head. I may have just shot my load. No, for Christ's sake. When I publish this thing every day, I specifically mark that it's clean. So I'm sorry. I will refer you to the idea of quail hunting and bird shot in a standard issue, perfectly acceptable shotgun. That's what I meant. Shot my load. So I don't know what I just did to myself, but we'll see. I'm gonna press forward. I'm gonna press on, and talk about more of the things that I know I want to and need to talk about in this thing right now, as we creep on past the 15-minute mark here in what I try to make into a 20-minute episode. I still haven't really broken any of the expectations, right? There were some people that were apparently listening a little bit for the first 8 to 9 episodes or so. It was getting like 3 or 4 listens. The last 3 now haven't gotten a single peep, and that's fine. Anchor keeps popping this thing out to other podcasting platforms for me. thanks. I guess I'm available on 7 platforms now. 7 platforms where nobody's listening, which I find funny. But it is. It's on Spotify. It's on Google Podcasts. It's on iTunes. It's on like 4 others that I've literally never heard of, including Anchor FM itself. Nobody in the real world really knows what this is or where it is yet. I told you a couple episodes ago, I've got 3 people in total that include my 11-year-old daughter that know that I'm even doing this, or have any inkling, but they don't know the name and they don't know where it is. One of those people I told yesterday that, by the way, I talked about you in the episode because I wanted to kind of tease him and I wanted to see if he would push and if he would try to get me to give up the ghost. And much to his credit, he did not. And I found that interesting. He's an individual that I told you a couple episodes ago is trying to really begin and become a creator himself, writing specifically. He was going to do some filming. He wanted me to kind of help guide and act as a producer for him. And he's written some stuff. Told me very specifically that he has written literally with a pencil on physical paper about 8 pages worth of something. I don't know what that something is. It almost sounds like it was like stream of consciousness stuff, but he didn't tell me what it actually was that he had written, nor will he let me read it at this point, which I understand. I think that he's doing that for the exact same reason that I'm not telling anybody the name of or the location of this podcast, because I want to kind of, I guess, just be in my own head here for a bit and not worry about any expectations on anybody else's part. I understand that he doesn't want, but I tried to kind of thread that needle and say, well, if you let me read that paper, I'll tell you where the podcast is. And again, much to his credit, this very intelligent young friend of mine said, no, not falling for it. More, I think, because he is not ready to share with me any of those specific thoughts and any of the stuff he's doing. He's just not ready. He's not ready yet. And he may be ready someday. He might get there. Who knows? It's possible. Not probable, but it's interesting because I have this friend who is creating in his own head and perfectly content with never releasing any of that yet to the world. Whereas on the opposite side, here I am trying to crank out content like a mad person, trying to create things to make them popular and get popular and famous and rich and whatever. And yet we're in the same kind of headspace, which is really kind of weird. And he pointed it out to me. I think the reason I started this episode where I did is because he was the one that pointed out to me, yeah, you know what? You're happiest when you're not worried about expectations. He's like, I talked to you a couple days ago. He comes by my desk at work once or twice a week, just to kind of check in on stuff, and we shoot the crap. And he's like, you have been miserable for a while. He's like, you're frustrated, you're exasperated, and yet today, here you are telling me about this podcast that nobody's listening to, and there's a glimmer in your eye, and there's a twinkle in your voice. He's like, that's got to count for something, that once you stopped worrying about what it actually does or how it's performing, you were much better off. So, that might be something to learn there. But that's all we're going to learn today. We'll stop it here, and tomorrow I will continue on into the actual projects that followed after the keto book, and see what other nuggets of hidden wisdom I can uncover for myself. Until then, thank you. Nobody's listening, but thanks anyways. And I will talk to you, or me. We'll talk to myself. I'll talk to somebody tomorrow. Have a good one.